Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew White, coming to you from the Ingram Micro Business Transformation Center. Today, I have a special guest again with me, Chris. Go ahead and introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are and where you work.
I love the special guest introduction, Matt. So my name is Chris Heinrich. I'm a senior technology consultant for Ingram Micro. I've been with Ingram Micro for 10 years now and supporting Cisco collaboration for all those 10 years. So happy to be with you today.
Thank you. So today we want to talk a little bit about Spark and how Spark is kind of getting moved into the new offer. So can you explain what the new offer is for us first?
Sure. The new offer is called Webex Calling. That is the fully featured cloud solution hosted by Cisco in the Webex cloud. It is the latest and greatest offer from Cisco. It came from the acquisition of BroadCloud. And today we're going to talk to you about how customers that are on the old Spark Call solution should be moving over or considering moving over to the new Webex calling solution.
So why would somebody want to move over? They already have this solution in place. Why would they want to be messing with it? Why would they want to switch it over to the new one?
Sure. So the Spark calling solution is actually end of life, end of sale. It's not essentially end of support yet. However, for anybody that wants to purchase it as new, that's not going to happen. Also, Cisco isn't really developing much more on the Spark Call solution. And from a feature perspective, the Spark Call solution is a little bit limiting compared to the Webex calling solution, where you have a much more feature-rich offer with constant communication and updates from Cisco.
So some of those features might be like the Webex Assistant for meetings. That's something that you obviously couldn't get. Is there any other features that you've seen that you think people would really be excited about getting by moving over to this new offer?
Sure. So with Webex calling, Cisco just unveiled a new offer called Webex Pstn. So if you are a customer that's using Spark, you're probably familiar with the provider Intellipeer because they are your SIP provider for your DIDs for the Spark calling solution. The Webex Pstn solution is essentially very similar to that offer. It is delivered directly to the Webex calling cloud, and Intellipeer is a dedicated CCP provider for that. However, from a billing perspective, you as a Cisco partner can now provide a single bill to your customer. So the billing will have the user's licenses for the Webex calling solution, as well as the PSTN charges for these SIP services through Webex Pstn, all on a single bill, right? So that's one benefit to using that offer, and it's only available on the new AFlex 3.0 offer.
I actually get a lot of customers that are interested in that just because of the simplicity. They just like to be able to have that single bill that they don't have to worry about communicating with multiple people and having them come from different locations and worrying about that. So having that all come through a reseller makes it a little bit easier for them to manage, and then the reseller can kind of keep track of that as well for the customer.
Yeah, the other thing too,
So
while we're talking about PSTN, Matt, real quick, is some of the
yeah.
other benefits that Webex calling provides is while you can use and leverage Webex PSTN services, there are some other options you can leverage as well, right? So with Spark Call, you had to use a CCP provider, and that was Intellipeer. That was the only option you had. With Webex calling, if you have a customer that has dedicated circuits, maybe some old POTS lines they still want to use, or PRI connections that they still want to use, or they have a contract with their SIP provider that they may not be able to get out of, you can actually install a local gateway at the customer site that is in the form of an ISR 4K router configured with the voice UC iOS package. And if you need NIM modules in there to interface with your PSTN connections, you can add those as well, or Cube licensing for your SIP connections. But that is an option, and you can leverage that in the Webex calling solution. There's also the ability for partners to leverage cloud-connected PSTN providers. So if you didn't want to use the Webex PSTN service in one bill, you can still use cloud-connected PSTN providers. And there's more than just one. There's actually a list that we can publish that Cisco has provided compatibility and has listed out the CCP providers that are available for the Webex calling solution. And this is a global solution. So there are providers that support connectivity globally. So a few different varieties to choose from based upon customer requirements that offer flexibility in deploying the Webex calling solution.
Nice. I know that when we're looking at this as a whole, a lot of people get a little nervous with that migration going from their old Spark offer to the new one. Is there anything out there that helps them with that? Obviously, other than some online guides and stuff like that, that obviously Cisco has a ton of those available for people as well. But what other resources do they have that they can utilize?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's first describe the process first, and then we'll talk about some of those resources that are available to partners and customers alike. So if you are a partner that has sold a customer Spark calling solution, it is highly encouraged that you start to begin to communicate to them that the solution has been end of life, end of sale, and they should start to consider migrating to Webex Calling. Illustrate some of the benefits to that solution. If you're unsure, contact Ingram Micro's pre-sale STNS team. We'll be glad to roll through those benefits with you. When the customer is ready to do this, since you've sold them that Spark solution, they already have a subscription ID. And that subscription ID is probably for an older offer. It's probably for an old A-SPK offer, which included the Spark calling solution, those old C1 or C3 licenses. What you'll do is you'll actually do a subscription modification replace. And you'll replace that offer from the old ASPK to the new A-Flex-3 and configure it for Webex calling, right? So you'll choose the types of licensing you want for Webex calling. The structure is designed for named user and enterprise agreements. Named users anything below 250 users. Enterprise agreements is anything above 250 users. In a named user offer, you have the ability to choose which license types you want to leverage. Professional. Professional includes call control for up to 5 devices, voicemail, and features such as the Webex app for persistent messaging. Enhanced is the other option, and that really just provides call control for the devices. So if you have like conference room phones or lobby phones or phones that are not associated to a user, that would be an enhanced license. And you can mix and match license types depending on the types of devices you have and the users that you have to fulfill. Very important when you're doing that step in the subscription modification process is there's a question in CCW that will say, is this a customer that's migrating from Spark Call? Yes or no? Select yes. Okay. What this is going to do is it's going to notify the migrations team at Cisco, right? And Matt's also going to provide you a link to that migrations team where you'll be able to reach out to them. The migrations team at Cisco is designed to help with the migration from Spark Call to Webex Call. Okay. So once you've processed the order and get a web order ID, that team will reach out to you and they'll begin the migration process. So migrating the user information, the configuration information from Spark Call to Webex Call. It allows you to run both solutions side by side because the last thing we want is an interruption of service, especially if it's the middle of a busy work week, right? So they help plan that out. Essentially, this team will help you do this migration from Spark Call to Webex Call. Once it's fully and wholly provisioned, that's when the subscription ID will get updated and the new billing will happen. And by the way, the billing might be cheaper because Flex 3 is a more less expensive offer than the older offers. And at that point, it'll get updated and the customer will be migrated to Webex Calling and your subscription will be updated. Now, it's also important to note that with Spark Call, the endpoints that were supported in Spark Call were 7800 series and 8800 series phones. The majority of those endpoints were running enterprise firmware on the old Spark Call solution, okay? There's also a question in the migration option for firmware migration licenses or enterprise to MPP, E to M licenses. You'll definitely want to make sure you check that box as well as enter in the amount that you need for your phones. 1 license per each phone that you have. The migrations team will help you migrate the software on those phones over to MPP so they'll work natively with Webex Calling.
Nice. And I do know also if you're going to be doing the additional common area licenses too, that you can select those separately so that way you have those licenses available for those phones that aren't actually tied to users. If you're going to be having those conversion licenses though for the phones, just be aware that they're only able to be provided at a free cost up to the number of users that you have. So if you are assigning 100 users to that subscription, you have 100 licenses for free to be converted from the enterprise over to the MPP. The other thing that I sometimes get on the technical side too is, well, what happens if I am using this as a demo environment and I move them over to MPP? can I move them back again? What's the process for that if I'm trying to move them back and forth between the two areas, or should I be doing that? And I can let you answer that if you want me to take that on. I can do that as well.
No, feel free. Go ahead.
Okay. So the answer I have on that one is that these licenses are only to convert them over to the MPP version of the phone. It's not to convert them back again. So you would have to pay for those licenses to convert them back again. So if you're using this as a demo environment and you're going back and forth, you really want to have two phones, one for the enterprise area and one for the MPP side, and really just use those independently. And that way it also makes it easier on you guys, so you don't have to do that flip back and forth all the time with the firmware. But that's really the answer, is you really want to have two different phones.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you bring up, Matt, especially like, using it internally or in a lab environment. So that kind of leads me to the next point as it relates to the partner organizations that have provisioned and are using Cisco's Unified Workspace for Partners Cloud Solution, or COOP Cloud. Just wanted to make all the partners aware that COOP Cloud has been officially announced end of life, end of sale. Okay. That solution was aging, right? It had an older offer in there. And some of the newer features for like Webex meetings, for example, like the Webex Assistant, the enhanced security pack, some of those additional features that are coming out for multi-language transcription support, they're not available in that old offer, right? And of course, the old offer didn't have Webex calling. It had Spark Call, right? And we could not add Webex calling to that solution. So Cisco has actually unveiled a new NFR program called Collaboration SaaS NFR, CSaaS NFR for short. And essentially what that is it permits a level 1 Cisco collaboration partner that has already achieved collaboration SaaS specialization, right? You got to have that. And I would encourage you to have Webex calling as well. Okay. It's going to give you up to $125,000 of total contract value annual spend on collaboration subscriptions, only collaboration subscriptions. Also, what you'll be able to do is if you have an old ASPK COOP Cloud offer in CCW, you'll now be able to go back into that offer, do a replacement modification to that, and actually change it from that to a Flex 3, configure all of your services, Webex Meetings, Webex Meetings Assistant, the enhanced security pack, Webex Calling. You can't add the Webex Pstn yet. It's not part of the offer for the NFR. But you can configure everything now with an up-to-date solution and get that for $0 because it's included in that allowance that you have to spend for the year.
I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that, being able to do the flip. And I've talked to a couple customers as well that are in the process of that or have already completed that. And it is a relatively seamless process. So it makes it really easy for customers to do that migration now versus when it was just at the beginning of January or end of January when they first did the new offer. It was definitely not as simple of a process as it is nowadays.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. And it's the latest and greatest offer.
So if you wanted to leave everybody with a piece of advice to really help convince them to convince their customers, or help their customers really understand the benefit here in a few quick sentences, what would it be?
Get your customers off of Spark and get them to Webex Call. You're going to future-proof their investment. Spark Call shouldn't even be a talking point anymore. I know that there was a lot of organizations that were using it that are on it, but you're going to see a great amount of benefit and enhancements to the Webex calling solution. Third-party integrations, Webex Pstn services. We talked about some of that flexibility. Additional device support. We didn't mention some of the other devices that are supported on Webex calling with the 6800 series phones. But a wide array of options to choose from hardware and a wide array of features and functionality to deploy on the software side. And it just makes sense, right? And essentially, like I said, in most cases, you're probably going to get a more up-to-date solution at a cheaper price, right? You're future-proofing your customer's investment. You're getting them moved over. You're getting them into the new Flex 3 offer. And now you have the option to expand that offer into other services if they don't have them today.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you want a little bit more information on how to do this, feel free to reach out to your Ingram Micro sales rep. They can definitely get you in touch with the right people. We also have our solution design and services team to help you with the actual build for that conversion from one to the other. And they can actually do that change modification with you, or change replace, I should say, with you to help get those right licenses. So that's a one-to-one comparable, and then add in the additional things that you should be looking at. And you, as always, you can reach out to myself as well in the Business Transformation Center to help you with any demos that you might be needing to become more familiarized with the software as well. So again, Chris, thank you for joining us today, and thank you everybody else, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.